In a busy courthouse in the small town of Oakfield, 8-year-old Tommy Bennett sat quietly on a hard wooden bench. His small legs didn't quite reach the floor, swinging back and forth nervously. The courtroom felt massive to him, with its high ceilings and serious-faced adults rushing about. Tommy clutched a folded piece of paper tightly in his hand, the edges crumpled from his nervous grip. Judge Margaret Wilson presided over the family court that day. She was known throughout the county for being firm but fair. After 20 years on the bench, she had seen almost everything. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes, though kind, missed nothing. Tommy was there because his mother, Penny Bennett, faced losing custody of him. The social worker's report claimed she had left him alone too many times while working her 3 jobs. Their flat had lost electricity twice this year, and Tommy had missed 14 days of school. The facts looked bad on paper. Case number 247, Bennett family, called the court clerk. Tommy and his mother stood up. Penny looked exhausted in her faded waitress uniform. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she squeezed Tommy's shoulder. "It'll be all right, love," she whispered, but Tommy heard the fear in her voice. As they walked to the front of the courtroom, Tommy could feel everyone watching them. The social worker, Mrs. Harris, sat at one table with neat folders and a stern expression. Their court-appointed lawyer, Mr. Thompson, motioned for them to join him at the other table. Judge Wilson looked down at the papers before her. The state is recommending temporary removal of the minor child, Thomas Bennett, from the custody of his mother, Penelope Bennett, on grounds of neglect. Mrs. Bennett, do you understand why you're here today? Penny nodded, her voice barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. The proceedings began with Mrs. Harris explaining all the ways Penny had failed as a mother. Tommy didn't understand all the big words, but he knew they were saying bad things about his mom. It wasn't fair. No one was talking about how she read to him every night even when she was tired, or how she saved the best bits of food for him when there wasn't enough, or how hard she tried to make things better for them since Dad had died. Tommy couldn't stand it anymore. He tugged on Mr. Thompson's sleeve and whispered urgently in his ear. The lawyer looked surprised but nodded after a moment. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson said, interrupting Mrs. Harris. The child would like to address the court. Judge Wilson looked down at Tommy with surprise. This was unusual. Very well, she said after a pause. Tommy walked forward, his heart pounding. The judge seemed so far above him, like a giant behind her big wooden desk. I have something for you, Tommy said, his voice small but determined. He held out the folded paper that he'd been working on all morning. The judge looked curious. Bring it here, young man. Tommy climbed the 3 steps to the judge's bench and handed her the paper. Their fingers touched briefly, and he noticed her hands were warm. Judge Wilson unfolded the note carefully. On it, Tommy had drawn a picture of himself and his mother standing outside their flat. Above them, he'd drawn the sun with a big smile. In his best handwriting, he had written, My mom is not bad. She works very hard. She cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. Please don't take me away from her. She loves me, and I love her. She's all I have left. The courtroom was completely silent as Judge Wilson read the note. For a moment, something flickered across her face. A softening around her eyes, a slight tremble of her mouth. She looked at Tommy, then at Penny, who was wiping tears from her cheeks. Thank you, Tommy, Judge Wilson said gently. She turned to the court clerk. I'd like to see counsel and the social worker in my chambers immediately. Then she looked directly at Penny. Mrs. Bennett, we'll take a short recess. Please wait here. As the judge stood to leave, she folded Tommy's note carefully and placed it in her pocket, rather than leaving it on her desk with the other papers. Tommy didn't know what this meant, but as he walked back to his mother, who wrapped her arms around him tightly, he felt a tiny spark of hope light up inside him. Sometimes the simplest words from the heart speak louder than any legal argument. 20 minutes passed in the silent courtroom. Tommy sat close to his mother, his small hand held tightly in hers. Penny's eyes were red from crying, but she tried to smile whenever Tommy looked up at her. Other people in the courtroom whispered to each other, glancing at the mother and son with curious eyes. The door to Judge Wilson's chambers finally opened. The judge returned to her seat, followed by Mrs. Harris and Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Harris looked stiff and uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson had a small smile on his face that gave Tommy a flicker of hope. After careful consideration of all factors in this case, Judge Wilson began, her voice clear and firm. I have decided that removal is not in the best interest of the child at this time. Penny gasped, her hand tightening around Tommy's. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could feel his mother's body relax beside him.
However, the judge continued, looking directly at Penny, there are serious concerns that must be addressed, Mrs. Bennett. I'm not dismissing the case. Instead, I'm ordering a different approach. Judge Wilson explained that she was placing
the family in a new program called Community Circle. Penny would receive help with childcare, job training, and housing support. Tommy would attend an after-school program at the community center where he would get meals and help with homework until his mother finished work. Mrs. Bennett, this court recognizes that you love your son and are trying your best under very difficult circumstances, Judge Wilson said. But love alone cannot keep the lights on or food in the cupboards. You need practical support, not punishment. Penny nodded, tears flowing freely now. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll do whatever it takes. Tommy, the judge said, looking at the boy with kind eyes. Your note helped me see the whole picture. Sometimes adults get so caught up in rules that we forget to look at what's really important. The judge then did something unusual. She stepped down from her high bench and walked over to Tommy and Penny. From her pocket, she pulled out a business card and handed it to Penny. This is my direct line, she said quietly. If you run into problems with any part of this program, you call me. I want this to work. As they left the courtroom, Tommy felt lighter than he had in months. Outside, the spring sunshine warmed his face. Mr. Thompson shook Penny's hand and promised to check in with them next week. Mom, are we going to be okay now? Tommy asked as they walked toward the bus stop. Penny knelt down to his level, looking into his eyes. Yes, love. I think we just might be. You were so brave today. I was scared, Tommy admitted. But I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do, Penny said, hugging him close. The next day, a woman named Lisa from the Community Circle program came to their flat. She had a kind face and brought a folder full of papers. She sat at their small kitchen table and explained how the program would work. First, we need to get your electricity situation stable, Lisa said. We have emergency assistance for that. Then we'll look at better housing options within your budget. Tommy watched as his mother took notes with the stubby pencil she usually used for crossword puzzles. For the first time in ages, she looked hopeful. And Tommy, Lisa turned to him with a smile. You'll start the after-school program tomorrow. They have computers there for homework, games, and they serve a hot meal every day. Will other kids be there? Tommy asked shyly. Lots of them, Lisa assured him. You might make some new friends. That night, as Penny tucked Tommy into bed, she seemed different. The worry lines on her face were still there, but she smiled more easily. You know what the judge said to me when we were leaving? Penny asked, smoothing Tommy's hair back from his forehead. What? She said that sometimes the people who need help the most are the last ones to ask for it, and that being a good parent isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about loving your child enough to accept help when you need it. Tommy thought about this as his eyelids grew heavy. I'm glad I wrote that note, he murmured sleepily. So, am I, love? Penny whispered, kissing his forehead. So am I. As she turned off the light, Penny noticed something she hadn't seen in a long time. Tommy had fallen asleep with a small smile on his face. Outside their window, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, small points of light against the vast darkness, just like the small point of hope now glowing in their lives. 3 weeks passed since that day in court. Tommy now went to the Community Circle after-school program every day. At first, he had been nervous, staying in the corner with his books. But soon he made friends with a boy named Jack who loved football, as much as he did. They spent hours kicking a ball around the small yard behind the community center. Miss Emma, who ran the program, noticed how Tommy hardly ever finished his food. Instead, he would wrap half his sandwich or a cookie in a napkin and put it in his backpack. One day, she gently asked him about it. "Tommy, aren't you hungry? You can have seconds if you like." Tommy looked down at his shoes. "It's for Mum," he said quietly. "Sometimes she doesn't eat because there's not enough." Miss Emma felt her heart squeeze. That evening, she made a phone call to Judge Wilson. The next day, Penny received a call from Lisa asking her to come to a meeting at the community center. When she arrived after her morning shift at the cafe, she was surprised to see Judge Wilson sitting at the table with Lisa and Miss Emma. "Mrs. Bennett," the judge said, "please sit down. We need to talk about something important." Penny sat, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Is Tommy in trouble?" "Not at all," Judge Wilson assured her. "Tommy is doing wonderfully, but we've learned something concerning. He's been saving food for you." Penny's face flushed red with shame. I didn't know he knew. I try to hide it from him." Lisa leaned forward. "Penny, why didn't you tell us you were struggling with food? The program includes food support." "I was embarrassed," Penny admitted. "I thought you might think I couldn't take care of Tommy properly." Judge Wilson shook her head. "The whole point of this program is to help, not judge. Pride won't feed either of you." By the end of the meeting, Penny had been signed up for weekly food deliveries and a cooking class that would send participants home with the meals they prepared. More importantly, she had promised to be honest about their needs. As weeks turned into months, things slowly improved. Penny completed a computer course through the program and got a better job at an office. The pay was still modest, but the hours were regular, and she was home every evening with Tommy. They moved to a small but nicer flat closer to Tommy's school and Penny's new job. It had reliable heating and a tiny garden where Tommy planted sunflower seeds from a science project. One evening in summer, as they sat eating dinner at their new table, Tommy noticed something. "Mum, you're smiling," he said. Penny looked up from her plate. "Am I?" "Yes. You smile a lot more now." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I have more reasons to smile these days." Later that week, they received a letter from the court. Tommy watched anxiously as his mother opened it. "What does it say?" he asked. Penny's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "It says we've completed the first phase of the program successfully. There will be a celebration at the courthouse next month for all the families and—" She paused, reading further. "Judge Wilson has asked if you would like to say a few words at the event." Tommy's eyes widened. "Me? What would I say?" "Whatever you want, love. Maybe about how things have changed for us." That night, Tommy couldn't sleep. He got up and went to his desk where he kept his colored pencils and paper. He began to draw a new picture, one showing his mother and him standing in front of their new home. This time, he added other people too. Miss Emma, Lisa, Jack, and Judge Wilson. They all stood in a circle holding hands under a bright sun. Underneath, he carefully wrote, "My family got bigger." When he finally crawled back into bed, Tommy felt a warm feeling in his chest. He remembered how scared he had been that day in court, how tightly he had held his mother's hand. Things weren't perfect now. Sometimes money was still tight, and his mom still looked tired after work. But the heavy feeling, the scary feeling that had lived in his stomach for so long, was gone. Outside his window, the sunflowers were growing taller each day, their faces turned toward the light. Tommy thought that maybe he and his mom were like those sunflowers now, finally finding their way toward the sun after a long time in the shadows. The courthouse looked different to Tommy now. 6 months ago, it had been a scary place with its high ceilings and serious faces. Today, it was decorated with colorful paper chains and balloons. A big banner hung across the entrance. Community Circle Celebration. Tommy wore his best clothes, a clean button-up shirt and the new trousers his mother had bought him for the occasion. Penny walked beside him, holding a plate of homemade biscuits. She looked pretty in a simple blue dress, her hair neatly styled. "Nervous?" she asked, noticing Tommy fidgeting with his paper. He nodded. "A bit. What if I forget what to say? Just speak from your heart, Penny said, squeezing his shoulder. That's what got us here in the first place. Inside, the main hall was filled, with families, social workers, and volunteers. Tommy spotted Jack from the after-school program and waved. In the corner, a table held drinks, sandwiches, and other treats brought by the families. Judge Wilson stood chatting with Lisa. When she saw Tommy and Penny enter, she walked over to greet them. "There's my favorite artist," she said warmly to Tommy. "I have your first drawing framed in my office, you know." Tommy smiled shyly. "Really?" "Absolutely. It reminds me every day why I do this job." The celebration began with Lisa welcoming everyone and explaining how the Community Circle program had grown. What started with 5 families now helped 25, with plans to expand to neighboring towns. "But numbers don't tell the real story," Lisa said. "For that, I'd like to invite Tommy Bennett to come up and share his experience." Tommy's heart pounded as he walked to the front of the room. He unfolded his paper with shaking hands. Looking up, he saw his mother's encouraging smile and took a deep breath. "6 months ago, I thought my mom and I were going to be split up," he began. "I was scared all the time. We didn't have enough money. Sometimes the lights went out. I missed school because sometimes Mom had to work and there was no one to take me." The room was quiet. Tommy saw some adults wiping their eyes. But then Judge Wilson read my note, and instead of taking me away, she helped us. Now Mom has a better job. I go to the after-school club where I made friends like Jack. He pointed to his friend, who grinned and gave him a thumbs up. "We have a new flat with a little garden. I'm growing sunflowers that are taller than me now. And Mom smiles a lot more." Tommy paused, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I made a new drawing. It shows how my family got bigger." He held up the colorful picture showing all the people who had helped them, standing in a circle holding hands. "Before it was just me and Mom against everything. Now we have people to help when things get hard. I think that's what family really means." As Tommy finished, the room erupted in applause. Penny was crying openly now, her hands pressed to her mouth. Judge Wilson stood up and walked to Tommy, bending down to his level. "May I have that drawing for my wall too?" she asked. Tommy nodded and handed it to her. "I made it special for you." The judge surprised everyone by giving Tommy a quick hug before returning to her seat. After the speeches, there was food and music. Tommy and Jack played with other children while the adults talked. Dr. Roberts, who had joined the program to offer free checkups to the families, taught the kids a magic trick with paper cups. Later, as the celebration was winding down, Tommy found himself standing next to Judge Wilson at the refreshment table. "Tommy," she said quietly, "do you know why your program is called Community Circle?" Tommy shook his head. "A circle has no beginning and no end. It can't be broken easily, and it can always grow to include more people." She smiled at him. "Your brave note started something important. There's a new family joining the program next week, a father and his daughter. They remind me of you and your mother when I first met you." Tommy thought about this as he sipped his juice. "Will they be okay too?" "I believe they will," Judge Wilson said, "because now we know better how to help." As they left the courthouse, the setting sun painted the sky in beautiful colors. Tommy held his mother's hand, swinging it gently as they walked toward the bus stop. "You were brilliant today," Penny told him. "I'm so proud of you." "Mom," Tommy said thoughtfully, "do you think Dad can see us? Do you think he knows we're okay now?" Penny looked up at the first evening star appearing in the sky. "I'm sure he does, love. I'm sure he does." 1 year had passed since that first day in court. Autumn leaves crunched under Tommy's feet as he walked home from school. He was taller now, his face a little less round, his steps more confident. At 9 years old, he carried his own house key on a football keychain that swung as he walked. Inside their flat, Tommy called out, "Mom, I'm home," but received no answer. This no longer worried him. His mother worked until 5 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but the Community Circle program had arranged for him to leave school early those days to attend a special art class. Tommy hung up his jacket and went to the kitchen for a snack. A note on the fridge read, "Lasagna in the oven. Turn it on at 5. Love you, Mum. He smiled and took an apple from the fruit bowl, something that was always full these days. As he sat at the kitchen table doing his homework, Tommy noticed a large envelope addressed to his mother. It had the court's official stamp. Curious, but not worried, he continued with his maths problems. When Penny arrived home at 5:30, her cheeks were pink from the cold and her eyes bright with excitement. "Tommy, love, how was your day?" she asked, hanging up her coat. "Good. I got full marks on my spelling test," he said proudly. "That's wonderful." She hugged him tight, then noticed the envelope. "Ah, it came." "What is it?" Tommy asked as she opened it. Penny pulled out official-looking papers and a handwritten note. She read the note first, her smile growing wider. "It's from Judge Wilson," she explained. "The case is officially closed. We've graduated from the program." Tommy's eyes widened. "Is that good or bad?" "It's very good," Penny laughed. "It means they trust that we're doing well on our own now. We'll still be part of the community circle family, but we don't need the court watching over us anymore." As they ate dinner, Penny shared more news. "Remember how I've been taking those evening classes?" Tommy nodded, his mouth full of lasagna. "Well, my teacher thinks I have a real talent for bookkeeping. She's recommended me for a job at her friend's company. It would mean more money and even better hours." "That's brilliant, Mum." "And there's something else." Penny reached for her handbag and pulled out a small box. "This is for you." Tommy opened it to find a simple mobile phone. "Really? My own phone?" "It's a simple one, just for calls and texts," Penny explained. "Now that you're getting older and more independent, I want to make sure we can always reach each other." Later that evening, as Penny was washing up, there was a knock at the door. Tommy opened it to find Lisa from the program, standing there with a cake box. "I heard someone graduated today," she said with a big smile. Soon their small living room was filled with visitors. Judge Wilson arrived, no longer in her court robes but wearing jeans and a comfortable jumper. Miss Emma came with Jack and his mother. Dr. Roberts brought his famous homemade biscuits. "I have an announcement," Judge Wilson said when everyone had cake. "The Community Circle program has received new funding. Starting next month, we'll be able to help 30 more families." Everyone clapped and cheered. "And," she continued, looking at Penny, "we need someone to help run the program, someone who understands what our families are going through because she's lived it herself." Penny's hand flew to her mouth. "Me? Part-time to start while you finish your courses," Judge Wilson confirmed. "What do you say?" "I'd be honored," Penny whispered, tears in her eyes. As the evening wound down, Tommy found himself sitting next to Judge Wilson on the sofa. "I have something for you," he said, reaching under the coffee table for a folder. Inside was a new drawing, his best work yet. It showed the courthouse but transformed into something warmer, with open doors and windows. People streamed in and out helping each other. In the center stood a circle of people of all sizes holding hands. "It's beautiful, Tommy," Judge Wilson said softly. "You have a real gift." "My teacher says I could be an artist someday," Tommy said. "I believe you could be anything you set your mind to." After everyone left, Tommy helped his mother clean up. The flat felt different somehow, fuller with the memories of laughter and friends. "Mum," Tommy said as they loaded the dishwasher, "remember when you used to cry at night?" Penny stopped, surprised by the question. "Yes, love." "Do you still feel sad like that?" She thought for a moment. "Sometimes I still miss your dad. Sometimes I still worry, but no, not sad like before. Not alone like before." Tommy nodded, satisfied. Later, as he drifted off to sleep, he thought about circles, how they had no beginning and no end, how they could always grow bigger, how they kept everyone inside safe. The note that had started it all now hung, framed on the wall of Judge Wilson's office. But its message had spread far beyond those simple words, touching lives neither Tommy nor Penny would ever even meet.